So far, we have invested almost 5 days in Agile Scrum training. So today we'll be taking one more. That will be the final day for Agile Scrum. And tomorrow I have planned something in terms of agility, uh, the best principles and best practices what we can do. So tomorrow's session will be the last final session will be very important and going to go fast for tomorrow's session. But let's see today. So yesterday means last Friday, we were discussing about different Scrum ceremonies, and we have seen the one of the Scrum ceremony in that was daily Scrum. That is nothing but a daily stand-up, where we have seen the entire development team members. They used to meet immediately uh, after daily scrum for technical sync up, because they do not discuss all those detailed discussion within the daily scrum, because if they start doing it, we cannot time box it with 15 minutes. So 15-minute time boxing is possible only when we restrict ourselves for detailed descriptions, or for adapting and replanning, or for other sprint related works for a subsequent call. So that is the reason why Scrum Master also ensures that development team has the meeting where the the ownership lies into the our Scrum team only to conduct this daily Scrum. And as I have mentioned earlier, in case any team members won't come or won't join, then the obviously Scrum Master is going to go and talk with that person, is going to explain the importance of daily Scrum, and then that person can join. So this is again an internal team meeting, that is a daily Scrum. So if others are present, then also the Scrum Master ensures that they are not going to disrupt the meeting. So that's the main focus of this entire Scrum is to daily Scrum or a daily stand-up is to improve communication, because we don't be having so much meetings, so we can eliminate other meetings. And if there is any impediments, let's find out there, and the Scrum Master can later work on removing those impediments for development, and then they can highlight and promote quick decision making. So overall, the it is going to improve teams' knowledge, and that is a key element for inspecting and adapting. Let's move to another ceremony, which is a sprint review or a demo. So this typically happens after means before end of the sprint. Again, it depends from PO or product owner to owner, and sometimes with the team member also. If they want to just give demo on a specific stories which they are working, say suppose if the sprint length is of 10 days and they don't want to wait for the last day, what they can do on the second or third day, if they are completing their stories, they can go and share it with the product owner. But what we used to say is around 4 hours of meeting we will do for 1 month of sprint, which means if we are having a sprint length of 2 weeks, so 2 hours of meeting, or if we see roughly 1 hour per week is what we are dedicating in sprint review. So attendees, including the Scrum team, will be there, and the key stakeholder will be product owner. Without product owner, you cannot have sprint review. You cannot say, hey, 4 or 5 team members met and the Scrum Master was present. We presented over to the Scrum Master, and that's how we completed sprint review. No, no. Why? Because in the sprint review, in the sprint demo, the product owner is going to decide whether there is a go or no go, whether it is a done or not done. So development team try to demonstrate what is the work they have done, and if there is any action about the increment or something, they can get the feedback from the product owner, and the product owner discusses the product backlog as it stand, and then he or she likely to target the delivery dates and other things. All these things can come into the sprint review. So in nutshell, entire group collaborate on what to do next once your all the demo of the individual Jiras or the stories are completed, so that the sprint review provides you a valuable input for subsequent sprint planning. Because after sprint review, you will be having a retro call, and after retro, it will be sprint planning. So sprint planning for the next sprint. So here product owner can give a very deep insight to the entire development team that how the product is behaving in the marketplace. You can get a review and what can be the potential use of this particular product, whatever we are changing, and what extra value we can put into this product in the subsequent sprint and all. So that there also means you are getting a feeling as if you are talking with the customer. So those things can also be part of your sprint review. And when we are going to give demo, if there is any bug or any feature which we are developing, so any architecture we can have. Sometimes we may have like it's kind of a non-formal, you won't be having any slides, but if someone wants to present, like we have seen in our team, Vishal's comes with one or two slide of PPT. Why? Because to just mention that what is the problem statement, or what are the features which we are trying to complete. But 2 hours of preparation time guideline is there for a sprint review meeting where entire team participate. When we say 2 hours of timeline, which means we are talking about 2 weeks of sprint. So we're going to invite the entire world, whole team is going to participate, and then everyone can give the review. But main done, not done is going to done by the product owner. Then the final ceremony of the sprint is, that is the sprint retrospective. In the sprint retrospective, what we are going to do is, it is an opportunity for the entire team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvement for the next sprint. So as we were saying, the example of guided missile, where after every sprint you can inspect yourself, what went well, what didn't went well, what are the action items which we can do in the next sprint. So this is how it will be. And this occurs after the sprint review and prior to the sprint planning. So this stage is in between review and sprint planning. So the main purpose of the sprint retro will be inspect how the last sprint went with regards to people, relationship, process, tool, and all sort things, how it went. And then identify that what are the major items that went well and that needs improvement, something which didn't went well and needs improvement. And then finally you are going to create a plan for the areas of improvement so that you can implement and the team can work towards that. And time being, we are having a monthly retro where I am putting the call and all the action items I'm tracking separately over the other sheet. So when we will be having a scrum, and then we will be having a sprint, we'll be having a retro after every sprint. Now moving before to story point, I would quickly like to take this slide. So yesterday we have seen sprint planning, and as I was saying, we will be having it in two parts: sprint planning meeting 1 and sprint planning meeting 2. So in sprint planning meeting 1, what team will build in the upcoming sprint and how team will build. So these two things are going to be differentiated between part 1 and part 2. As I said, in the part 1, from a product backlog, what are the things which we are going to put into the sprint backlog, our focus will be there. So focus on what team is being asked to build and is attended by both the product owner and the team. So product owner will be having the opportunity to describe a desired set of stories to the team. Then you can have a deep dive session on what portion of the stories, like how and what we are going to do it. And the product owner is going to present those stories showing how those things are going to interact and walk through the interfaces. So sometimes if there are wireframes or mockups, those things can also be shown by the product owner. And then the second part of the sprint planning is where team is going to turn their attention in building the sprint backlog. So they will be having a list of stories and the task required to complete during the sprint. Now team is going to break down each story that product owner has requested at the task level, and they are going to give the estimate. It can be hourly estimate or the story point as we will be doing. And then the team decides which stories they can commit for completing during the sprint. So this is how at two level the sprint planning 1 and the sprint planning 2 happens. Now let's talk about very important point, that it is a story point. That is nothing but a weight of specific story. So if I go with the definition, it says it's an abstract measure of effort required to implement a user story. When we say effort, effort means it includes, time is already included in the effort. Because when we say effort, without time, there is not much meaning of effort. When we say, okay, it is low effort or high effort or a complex. So in simple terms, it is a number that is going to tell you, the team, that how difficult this story is. And difficulty could, you can relate it with the complexities, risk, effort involved, no, unknowns. All those parameters will come into this formula. But all together, we are going to weight story with a story point depending on how much effort or how much difficulty level or how much complex or the user story is. And then you will be seeing some stories, some stories will be having low story point, some will be having high story point, and as we practice, we can gain perfection over story pointing. So when team is new and first time when they are implementing Agile Scrum into their project, they won't be knowing how to do story pointing. So this is a practice which we can do. So whenever we are doing story pointing, few things which we need to consider is what is the amount of work, how complex the work is, how much risky it is or how much level of uncertainty it is, and the time and duration. It's combination of all these things. If someone is saying, hey, one day equal to one story point, no, that is not the correct idea, which means he's just focusing upon the fourth bullet point, the last bullet point, that is time duration. No, it's not only time duration, it depends on everything. If the entire team is new, the product is new, and everyone is not that much experienced, that time your story point may go higher. But if the same team, when they gain expertise after 2 years, when they do the story point of the similar story, the story point will be obviously low for the entire team. And again, very important point for story point is the story pointing is not done by individual team member. Rather, it is done by all the team members. So let's see how we are going to do Agile estimate. So there are three ways: planning, poker, t-shirts size, and the days per hour. So we don't recommend much days per hour. So this is what traditionally we used to do, and as a practice we are having man day hours and all those things. But the most preferred one is to do planning, poker. T-shirt sizing we do at epic level, and then when we have a major stories, that time we will do t-shirt sizing. And in the planning poker or when we do story pointing also, we'll keep one story as a base story, and on the top of that story we are going to build. So as you can see, we have a different uh, amount of water in all this bottle, and this is one measure. So if I say the lowest one is a measure 1, so from the right hand side, the first one from the right hand side bottle, which is having the lowest water level. So if that is my story 1, then and the third last bottle can be my, no, if it is a double, then story 2, and if it is a triple, then the second bottle can be story 3, and if it is 5 time in the first bottle, then it can be story 5. So this is a relative sizing, or relative, and that again depends on the t-shirt sizing also, where you can have a, no, small, medium, large, XL, or XLL plus, something like that. So let's talk about planning poker. So have you ever played a game, poker, cards, playing cards? Never? Okay, no problem. So I will tell you the cards. So you will be having cards something like this, and you can see this is in the Fibonacci series. 1, 3, 5, and then 5 plus 8, 13, and then you will be having 8 plus 13, that will be 21. So likewise we will be having you'll be having actually this card in your hand. Now suppose if uh, if the team is co-located and everyone is sitting, now try to understand the process. You are having a product backlog, a scrum master is there or a product owner is there who is reading one story from a product backlog which comes to the sprint backlog, or our product backlog grooming is going on. So imagine round the table there are 5 team members who are sitting. Okay, that is the first step. Scrum master or a product owner, they are no reading a story, and then it has been shared over the screen also. So when the story is read, everyone is listening the story and they are having their own estimate how much no on what parameters, how much time, effort, uh, um, complexity, risk, unknown, average of all those things are there. Now all the team members will be holding this poker card with them, and all the team members are going to decide, okay, I can give 3 story point, I can give 1 story point, I can give 3 story point, I can give 5 story point, I can give 8 story point. Now when the scrum master is going to ask, hey, everyone is ready, have you analyzed this, or do you have any doubt? If they have any doubt, they are going to call this, ask and clarify it with the product owner. And once product owner clarifies everything, the scrum master is going to say, show your card, show. So when he says show, literally you are going to show your card, and then everyone will be seeing each other's card. So someone may have 1, 3, 5 or 5, 5, 3, 8, so and so. Now that is a round 1. In after round 1, what is going to happen? In case all the team members has given 5 story point, which means okay, everyone is on the same point, that okay, it should be 5. It's clear, no further discussion, and the 5 story point will be labeled on that particular story. In case there is a variation and the 2 team member or 1 team member is saying 1, and there is 2 team member or 1 team member who is saying 8. So one is saying 1 and another is saying 8, which means there is either mismatch in their understanding or something. So what Scrum Master is going to do, Scrum Master will ask one person who has given the lowest story point, hey, can you tell me, can you tell to the, or can you share your thoughts why you think it is 1 story point? So many times we have seen that guy may be experienced guy, 10, 12 years into the product or something, or very techy, or he has worked on the similar things, or he is having experience. All those parameters taken into consideration, he knows that it is very simple. So you can say, hey, this is just two-liner changes, and I know it can be done very easily. Effort is very less. That's why development effort, QA effort, regression effort, everything is less. So I given it as 1. Now the second team member who has given it, majority times we have seen, okay, that guy is relatively new or not aware of the functionality. For him, it is the first time he is seeing. He's not very sure. That's why he might have given 8. And then after listening these two discussion, we will have a round 2. After round 2, the other team members can also change their cards. Now in the round 2, some team members are showing 2 and others are showing 5, but still it is not 2 or 5 or not in between 3. So we can have n number of repetition till the time everyone comes to one consensus that, okay, this is the story point. Now, sometime it may happen that a person who is giving higher estimate is the experienced one, and he know what are the things needs to be taken care of. This is a UI change, a PDF generation, and the pixel this and that, and no, the testing is going to take much time. That's why I am doing it. And when you do story pointing, that time you are considering everything. It's not like one developer is giving story point by just thinking that my development effort is this much, so I have given 5 story point. And when it comes to someone else in the team who is doing testing, so he should add 2 story point extra for that, or for regression or automation some other. No, it's combination of everything. So uh, now you understood the entire process. So planning poker, also we called it as a Scrum poker. It's a consensus based gamified technique. Means you are playing a game, you are enjoying it for estimating. Mostly used to estimate efforts or relative size of development goals in software development. So we were using stack in my previous organization. In a stack, if you just type their story point, and if you put the Jira number, automatically it will show you the UI where each team member can go and put their points. And when everyone is done, uh, someone can reveal it. The moment we reveal, we can see, okay, whoever has given how many things. So we can do it over a tool like a stack, or there are many tools which are available, or through the actual poker card. So here we are going to analyze all user stories and going to identify the base or reference story, which is very important. Unless and until your base and reference story is not identified, you cannot do relative sizing. I can see if this is one mouse with this much shape and size, I can say, okay, how bigger can be the 5 mouse, or 5 times relatively more than that. But if this base itself is not defined, we cannot say. That is the reason you cannot compare velocity of one team with another team. Why? Because we'll be seeing velocity is altogether how many story points you are completing in one sprint, and average of, means average of last five sprint or 6 sprint. So you may have relatively new team, or a mature team, or intermediate team with a different level of maturity, and obviously a team who is new or who is inexperienced, if they are giving some base point as story 1, that base point will be low, and whatever they are thinking, and according to one base point, if the story point is 3, this 3 story point may be the base point as a 1 for some other team member. Getting my point? That's why we never compare velocity with two different teams, and identifying this base or reference is very important. So that is first thing. Second thing is, we'll pick another story from the current product backlog. We'll discuss and clarify with PO. And then we are going to make a list of things which needs to be taken care for implementing that user story, which means effort for designing, review, coding, code review, PR review, that is unit testing, integration testing, exception testing, expertise, regression testing, automation, performance, security, everything. everything, whatever is needed for that specific story to go live into the production. That is all about user means the story point which we are going to give. And then obviously we are going to do relative sizing for the selected story, which means by keeping one as base, the 3 or 5 or 8 can be given. So these are the numbers. Why we choose Fibonacci series is so that we can break down 8 into 3 and 5 and 3 into 1 and 2, so on. So here 2 is not shown in the UI in the PPT, but we'll be having a card of 2. So we as a team, we try not to give 4 story point, no, or 6 story point or 7 story point. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, something like that. Rarely we will give 13. If story point is 13, which means we need to go back to PO and to ask them by giving our inputs that can we break down into 8 and 5 story point? Can we break down into 2 sub stories? And still sometimes if it is 8 story point also, let's see whether we can break it down into 3 and 5. So this is whatever I have explained you in the flow chart wise. So you will schedule a planning poker session with the team in the first step, and each estimator opens up the deck of the card as I have uh, explained to you, and the facilitator will give the overview of the requirement. So in the third box which you are seeing, third rectangle, this facilitator can be PO or it can be Scrum Master. Majority of time this person will be Scrum Master. And then the estimator are going to provide their estimate by showing the card. After this fourth box, there is a diamond box you can see at the center. If everyone is on the same consensus, means all the team members says 33333, there are 6 team members who say 333 and 1 team member who say 1, 2, who says 2, then we may neglect that. Okay, fine, majority of them are saying 3, it's just 1, 2. We can ask them, are you okay if we go with 3? Then he will say, oh yeah, I'm okay, no need to go for second round. So if the consensus are reached, all requirements are estimated, then we are going to start sprint, means step by step. And you can see if it is not reached, means the left side of the diamond box, then lowest and the highest estimate provider gives justification as I explained. And then again, you will have one more round. Third thing is in the last diamond box, you can see if all the requirements are not met, if it is a no, then you will move to the next requirement, and again your facilitator is going to read the story. So this flowchart says, okay, one by one we are going to read out everything, and then all the story pointing is going to done. So after this planning poker session, you will be having all the stories which are weighted in the sprint backlog. Very important point is if sprint is running and someone is pushing because of the scope change, we don't want to have scope change, but still sometimes in practically we see we'll be having scope change. Without doing grooming of that specific story, without doing story pointing, anyone, say product owner, Scrum Master, team member, cannot push those stories, cannot include those stories into a sprint backlog. So whenever we say sprint backlog, all the stories in the sprint backlog should be story pointed. What if story which is not story pointed and it is in your sprint? After completion of sprint, you are not going to get a weightage of that completed story point, which means we spend time on that 1 or 2 team members, and say suppose if the stories point would be, say suppose 5 story point, and when the sprint completes, the story completion is, say suppose 42. So 42 will only get accounted. This extra 5 story point which you missed, which team missed doing it, is not going to be accounted. So 47 it should be ideally, but it is now 42, and this extra 5 story point is not going to accounted into the sprint velocity as well. That's why story pointing is very important. So Scrum team should be involved in the estimation, and when we are doing story pointing, so this points will come into the capacity planning, basically where you are going to consider holidays, leaves, and the meeting times, and you are going to plan your working hours and all these things. So capacity planning is not a sprint ceremony as such, but when we are doing sprint planning, that time itself, depending on the sprint velocity and how much capacity we are having. Say, for example, this holidays and leave, you know, we are having a sprint of 10 days, 10 working days, but the 9th day is a public holiday where entire office is not going to work. So we need to take into the consideration, yes, my average velocity is 45, but can I do something so that I can accommodate? And obviously in the 9 days, we cannot do that. If we are going to, no, don't consider this buffer of no any support calls or L1N2 issues or holidays or maybe some NFRs or something which comes in between, then obviously we will be going to have a spillover, and that team don't want. So capacity planning is very important. Now we are almost towards the completion of the Agile Scrum uh, slides which I intended to cover. Now the second part is, or the last part is Agile Matrices. So what all matrices we are going to cover? As we say, our focus is on the development, and from output we are moving towards outcome. So for doing that, one of the matrices which, in the last 5 days I am saying velocity, velocity, velocity. So this velocity is one of the prime matrices which you can think of, because this is a measure of amount of work a Scrum team can tackle during a single sprint, and is the key metrics of Scrum. How it is calculated? It is calculated at the end of the sprint by totaling the number of story points completed from the user stories which you have taken, and then you will do the average of the last 5 sprint. Okay, so if 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, that is the 5 sprint, which means if we do average, so somewhere around 30 is going to be the sprint velocity. And then the burn down chart already we have seen earlier. It will give us how many stories we have completed. Likewise, you will be having a burn up chart. In the burn up chart, you will be seeing every day how much stories we are completing. And then you're having something which is known as a fluctuation, where you will be seeing um, in a sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and sprint 6. In all the sprint, how many story points you are completing. From average, you are getting your velocity as 25 for the average of 6 sprint. So we'll see what is the upper band, what is the lower band. If 35 is my upper band, means I never reach 35, and we never went down to 20 story point. Means every sprint we have completed more than 20 story point, and we never crosses 35 story point in any of the sprint. So this y-axis which you are seeing is a story point, and this x-axis which you are seeing is nothing but a sprint series. Series means a sprint only. And in the sprint 1 it was 24, that is the first point. In sprint 2 it was 25, which is colliding. So the orange bar is the actual bar of your actual sprint. So this is how we'll see. And the blue line which you are seeing is at the 25 is nothing but your sprint velocity. So this is how you will see from my average velocity how much fluctuation is happening, where you are going to define some upper and lower band. So this is a pictorial, and here you can have a capacity utilization of the things, and this is something which is a scope change. Scope change is ideally we should not add anything in the ongoing sprint, but in the sprint one you committed for 29 and 0 added, 0 removed, so 0 result means no scope change. Whereas in the sprint 2 we committed for 25, but in between we removed 5, so 20 is the result, so there is a scope change, or we are not able to deliver, or it got spillover. Likewise, you can see for other sprint also you will be having something as committed and how much you will do. So you can see the scope change example from here. Now we are making a report. If you are using a tool like Jira, everything will be generated by itself. Earlier in good old days when we don't have tool, then manually Scrum Master used to take the update from each developer, and they used to put on the Excel sheet, and the Excel sheet used to by putting the formulas we used to generate and see those things. But now that's not needed. We are having all the tools needed for us who can do calculation on our behalf. So first is sprint and release burn down. It is going to give stakeholder a view of your progress at a glance. So when I say sprint burn down, it is with respect to sprint. Release burn down means you may define your release as a combination of 3 or 4 sprint. So for a sprint, if 40 stories points are decided, you can see the burn down for those 40 story point. For a release, you may have a higher story points, and you can see how that is progressing. Sprint velocity, we have already seen, it is a historical review how much team can deliver. It is in terms of our capacity. Scope change also we have seen how many story points either got added or got removed. Majority times you are going to add the stories, then that is going to result for delay, and we should not do that. But practically, sometimes it happens where we need to include something in the ongoing sprint. Team capacity is how many developer you have full time, and sick leaves and other things going to consider. Escape defect. This is first time we are listening the term. Escape defect is something which is going to provide you a picture of how your software is faring in the production, which means why we are saying it as escape is the defect which you are seeing in the production, which means it got escaped from your unit testing or regression testing or integration testing or automation testing and all those things. So all the defects which are into the production is got escaped. So you will be seeing how many production defects you are having versus how many regression defects which you found in the development cycle. So just a quick recap on the Agile Manifesto, which we have seen. So we had almost 12 principles. So first principle was that our highest priority is to satisfy customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So emphasis is on the valuable working software. Second point was we are going to welcome all the changing requirement even in the late development, and we had discussion where Lakshmi asked this query, and agile process harness those change for customers competitive advantage. Customer can get only competitive advantage if we are flexible enough to accept those changes. Third principle was delivering working software frequently from a couple of weeks to a couple of months with a preference of shorter time scale. And then fourth principle was business people and developer must work together daily throughout the projects. That's how we used to have a stand up, and closely product owner we used to work as a team. Fifth principle was we want to build project around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done, because they will be having their own responsibility which they feel. Sixth principle was the most efficient and effective way of conveying information to and within a team development is to have face-to-face conversation. That's why we say that the team should be co-located. And working software is the primary focus as a measure of progress. It's not all the tools and other matrices which majorly Agile focuses. It's on the working software. Obviously, we have 4 or 5 matrices which we can take. Eighth principle was agile process promotes sustainable development. The sponsors, developer, user should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. That's how we gauge it with the sprint velocity. Ninth principle was continuous attention to technical excellence and the good design enhances agility. So our objective is to enhance agility. And simplicity, that is the art of maximizing the amount of work not done and which is versus which is essential. 11th principle was the best architectures, requirement and design emerges from self-organizing team. So we need to have a self-organizing team. And last principle of the Agile is at regular interval, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. So we have seen this in a sprint retro. So that's why in the sprint retro meeting, that is our last meeting. Typically, we will be having 30 to 60 minutes of meeting up at the end of the sprint, where team is going to inspect and adapt that what didn't went well, what went well, and the action items on what didn't went well. So we are going to do after every sprint, the entire team is going to participate along with Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the team. And start, stop, continue. Start, stop, continue means what went well, continue. What didn't went well, stop. If there is new initiative, then start. So that's how we'll do. If I pocket size all the Agile 12 principles which we have seen, it's delivery value early, welcome change, iterative delivery, daily basis collaboration, trust motivated team, that is an individual, face-to-face conversation, working software, sustainable pace, technical excellence, KISS, that is keep it short and simple, self-organize and reflect and adjust. So old way was just tell me boss what to do and I will do it. But agile way is here what I think it is right thing to do. You are seeing the shift. Earlier we were saying I'm done with my part, now you guys finish your work. So the ownership was not there for the entire team. Now here in Agile we are saying I'm done with my task. What can I help with next? If it is going to the next phase or next team member also. And earlier old way was boss has the right answer. Here we don't have a concept of boss at all. We have the best answer. We do the work as a Scrum team. And we can't do that there. It was the old way and the new way is how we can do it better. If you can't do that, what can you do? Something like that here we'll see. So Scrum definition, who can give me the answer for this 3 question mark? Who remembers? Carlos, Alex. Okay, not able to recall? Fine. So it's cross-functional, self-managing and the working software is what we said. Development framework wherein cross-functional, self-managing team delivers working software every day. So that's all I wanted to cover today. But since we have some time, at least 12 minutes, so I would like to utilize and will push the starting of the day 7 slide tomorrow, because there are many things which the last thing which we are going to cover tomorrow, that is our last 7th day, is all about Agile Stack. When I say Agile Stack, in the first day, you would have seen there are so many things in the Agile like no Crystal, RUP and extreme programming and all those things. So maybe some of the best practices in the agile stack is what we will be seeing. So customer interaction, consistent practices, Scrum adoption. So we have seen the Scrum adoption. Now team first, what is evolutionary design? Evolutionary design, we have seen that was our first slide, and automated testing. We never spoke about automated testing, and tomorrow, like majority of my content will be for automation testing only. I think for Carlos also it is going to be very interesting session tomorrow. So let's see some of the slides. So for automated testing, what is a good unit test definition? So that this is the first test which we do as a developer after writing a code. So a unit test, and here we are using Java in our project. So we used to write a JUnit. So the unit test is a piece of code written by a developer in a unit testing framework like JUnit. So now recently we are migrating from JUnit 4 to JUnit 5, and then you have a different unit testing framework and other testing framework as well. So that invokes the method, class or function being tested and then checks some assumptions about the logical behavior of that method, class or function. It is fully automated, trustworthy, readable and maintainable. And the beauty of doing a unit testing is if your all the test cases are written and then it's been integrated with the Jenkins pipelines, by mistake also you cannot do something wrong because the test case fails. The build is not going to happen. So it's not going to push it into the maybe the pre-production or production environment or staging environment, something like that. So that's about unit test. Here we want to set a term. So few test definitions like integration or the functional testing. So where we are going to test two or more dependent software module or system as a group. Unit testing is a developer is developing his own thing and then pushing. But when that piece of code or piece of functionality goes and merges with the software or application, then there are other things which are already working. So by pushing this, it should not disturb there. Or if the UI element, one of the example is when any dynamic UI element you are pushing, it's not, it should not disturb the existing UI field. Likewise in the backend or anywhere. So goal is to test overall functionality of the system as our client will use our services. So that is the thing. Now drawback of doing that is, this is important to do, but drawback is we will lose the granularity of knowing what piece is causing the functionality to fail. Okay, we cannot pinpoint it exactly what is failing because the site crashes or the page is not loading because of some other things, or the user experience got disturbed or error is coming. There can be many scenarios, but it will drive us to re-examine our unit tests and refactor, rewrite them. So if the integration testing is failing, which means, okay, we will go one more step back. So across industry, and if we want to have very high quality product, then shifting quality to the left is very important. When I say shifting quality to the left, which means instead of finding bug in the production, find it in the pre-prod environment, in the UAT phase. Before finding in the UAT phase, it is good if we can find that thing, that issue, that defect, that bug in the pre-prod environment, say your sandbox or staging environment. And before sandbox or staging environment, it's good if you find it in the JUnit on the developer machine itself. And before development machine, if in the review with the team members, when the PR review is being raised, that time if we can find. So the more we shift towards left, it is good for us to have much more higher quality code and the product which we are going to deliver to the customer. Second thing is regression. So regression refers to a testing of previous features that used to work and now needs to be retested to ensure continued functionality. And sometimes we say it as a regression bug, which means, hey, it was working earlier. I did some changes, and because of that changes, the existing functionality broke. So now the importance of regression testing comes. So this is why the regression testing is important. So for the unit testing, then your integration, functional testing, or a system testing, whatever you say, and then the third part is regression testing. Why it is very important is, say one example, you are working on some common controller or a common piece of code which is being used at several places, or one example is the time zone converter. That time zone converter is used at multiple places. You just change something there. Because of that, the calendar or the other functionality related with the time zone, that's not working. I wanted to fix something as a new requirement, but as a developer, I end up in breaking the existing functionality. That's why this regression things come into the picture. Now what to do? We should go towards enabling the agility. So from enabling the agility and all, we will be seeing tomorrow. I will take a pause here and will wait for any question answer which we are having. Any queries?
No questions so far.
Okay, thank you. So today I will, in the last 5 minutes, I will do something differently. So every day I used to recap what we have covered in the entire session. Today I will just show you the slides which I prepared for the last for tomorrow for the last session. So we will be seeing tomorrow enabling agility, and then the difference without test and with test, test last approach, what is test first approach, what are the testing techniques, and writing a bug versus writing a test. And then once this is done, then we'll be seeing teams will be coming the team first, where we'll be seeing the cross functional team, team commitment, collective code ownership, continuous integration, and continuous improvement model. Finally going to the code review, paired programming, and then all these things. So altogether this is what we are going to cover tomorrow. Refactoring, simple design. I need to update this slide. So all these things, and then this will be the final slide which we are going to cover. Team best practices, and then going to recap, 2 more slides for recapping, and then we are going to end. So tomorrow, all these things, whatever I have shown, deep dive into that will be doing. Okay, finds interesting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then let's wind up here, guys. Thank you. Good day. I will see you tomorrow.
Good day. Bye.
Good day.